Hello and welcome everybody to another SpacedVentures live stream. This is actually our second closing live stream, which is super exciting. And it's actually our second live stream with our founder, David Mitlyng, who is obviously the CEO of Xairos. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce David and we'll have an opportunity to hear from him on the progress that the company has made from the launch up until this point, and also have an opportunity for Q&A. So definitely make sure you're putting any comments, any reactions you have, any questions in the chat. Something we like to really do here at SpacedVentures is to just check in where everyone is logging in from. So Isabella, Aaron, Casey, Nicole, welcome. Let us know where you're tuning in from. David will also share that information, and I'm back here in Dubai. Really excited to be hosting this. So if you're regular on the SpacedVentures streams, you might have noticed our stream looks a little bit different. This is completely normal. It's because we listen to your comments and we take them really seriously, and we're always trying to make the live stream experience so much better than it can be. So now, as you might have noticed already, you no longer need to go in and log in through YouTube. That's right, you can just go onto the SpacedVentures site, you could log in using your credentials, and then just type directly into the live chat, which is awesome and easy, right? So yeah, I mean, use it. It's a functionality that we've created based on your feedback, and we definitely love some feedback on it. Welcome Ethan from Brownsville, Texas, Brandon from Florida. Lovely to have you with us. I'll be popping in and out just to check in, but definitely put in your comments there. And without further ado, let's bring on David. David, why don't you come on?
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Jivika. That was a wonderful introduction. And I just want to say, really, it's been wonderful working with you and the SpacedVentures team and your audience and the investors. It's hard to believe it's been 3 months already, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. You launched what, I want to say March 8th?
Yep. So it's been almost 3 months on the nose, and really just I can say for us and for our full team, it's been a wonderful experience, and just really great to come back around, circle back around, and reconnect with your audience, and talk again about what we're doing at Xairos.
You guys, I mean, that's great because that just shows you how live we are, right? I mean, this is not pre-recorded. This is exactly what it's about. Hey, Paul from Santa Rosa, California. Fred from Oregon, I believe. Holly from Seattle. Lovely to have you with us. David, isn't it exciting to see everyone from all over just tuning in? It's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm planning here in my home office here in Denver, Colorado. So maybe there's somebody in the area, but yeah, it's great to get this worldwide audience.
Awesome. So David, I'm going to turn it over to you. I believe you have a little bit of an update. You're going to do a little bit of a pitch. Not a pitch, you just have a presentation that you'd like to share with everyone tuning in. So I'll let you get into that, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. So definitely, as David is going through his little spiel here, hopefully you find it interesting, but definitely if there are comments that you want to make, do put those in, and I'll be pulling from those directly afterwards. So over to you, David.
All right, outstanding. So, when we started this adventure here with SpacedVentures, we had a few objectives in mind. Obviously, the main one was to get some investments, seed investments, so that we could kind of catalyze some development that we were looking to do. It's been very successful from that end. We've got over 550 investors, a little over 400K. But the other main objective we wanted to do was to reach out to a space savvy audience and teach them, or basically connect and network with this group and talk a bit about what we're doing at Xairos and the problem we're solving. So if you come along this far, you probably already know Xairos is building a global timing service to replace timing from GPS. And this has been a big problem that needs to be solved. It's very well known within the military, the government, and commercial network providers. But the general audience has not appreciated or understands this very well. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of highlight a few common comments and misperceptions about the value of what we're providing here at Xairos, talk about our technology and why it's better, and then just give you some progress and updates and let you know, hey, the value of what you provided for us and what we're doing. So let's start off with just 4 basic common misperceptions that we get all the time in Xairos. The first one is the obvious one. You all know this. I've probably learned this by now, is that GPS is about position. No, it isn't. GPS is about time. Everybody uses GPS on your location app for Uber, for driving. So you get that perception that it's only about, allowing you to know where you're located. But the majority of the trillions of dollars of economic benefit that GPS has created since its inception has really been in as the clock for the world. All financial transactions, all networks, all communications, all power grids rely on a timing signal to keep their networks synchronized, the efficient movement of bits and data across the network. And that has been the biggest value that GPS has created since its inception. The other common, it's gotten to the point where it's so embedded, so enmeshed in providing that synchronization for networks, that if GPS was ever had long-term outages, credit cards and ATMs would go offline right away, immediately crippling businesses. It would then go into your internet and cell phone would go down within 24 hours. And within 48 hours, the power would go out. It's that critical to our daily lives. The other common misperception we used to hear this a lot was, hey, GPS is good enough. I'm driving, it got me to, my friend's house. So, what would you need to replace that with? That one is a huge resounding no. It is not good enough. Partly it's because it's a weak signal. It's a weak signal coming in from these satellites that has been open source. It's easy to jam. It's easy to spoof. It goes out all the time. There's like 50,000 reported outages a year, which is very scary if you think about how our modern world relies on that. But this has like really become into focus recently with the Russia advances in Ukraine, where they've been jamming at that border, and it's actually grounded flights in Finland and other places, kind of wreaking havoc across the borders there in Europe. So we don't really hear that as much anymore. The other aspect of it is, not just the outages, right? The other aspect is it's not fundamentally accurate enough. GPS was designed in the 70s and 80s to provide a timing signal that's accurate to roughly 40-ish, 100 nanoseconds. And that was good enough to enable 4G LTE, but 5G networks require 30 nanoseconds. 6G networks require sub-nanosecond, picosecond level accuracy. Quantum networks, data centers, edge computing, and even industrial automation all require sub-nanosecond accuracy. And GPS just fundamentally is not going to get there. The other kind of common thing I get, especially with investors, is hey, well, GPS is free. Why pay for? Why would anybody buy your service when they got this free GPS signal? And that one's I can understand where this perception comes from, because again, nobody pays for using your location app, though you could argue the data mining that companies are getting off it is how they make their money. But the reality is maybe GPS is quote unquote free for that, but it's not free for the enterprise users that need the timing and sync signal. These companies, these groups buy roughly 500,000 units a year that range in price from $5,000 to $150,000 a box. And this little chart here shows a number of the companies that build these timing and synchronization units that provide it. It's a multi-billion-dollar a year business. And fundamentally, the quality, the price you pay depends on, maybe you want a little bit better resiliency, a little bit better accuracy. You got to put in these exquisite atomic clocks if you want to have a little bit better stable performance. But GPS, that signal is still the weak link. It's not, you can't buy something that will replace that. And that's where Xairos will come in. Now, the other one is less a factual misperception than it is that a strong opinion that we hold at Xairos. So it's a bit more controversial, and that is that GPS will be around and used forever. That it won't be replaced. And that one we believe there's a big movement to replace GPS with a version for the military and another version that will be privatized by a company like Xairos. And to understand that, you have to understand the history of GPS. It was originally created in the 70s by the US military to obviously provide better position and timing for troops overseas, ships on the open water. And it was only really made available for civilian use with two executive orders, one in the 80s with Ronald Reagan and another one with Bill Clinton in the mid-90s. And once that got opened up for civilian use, it just created this boom in consumer devices, and then it just became ubiquitous for particularly for networks as they went from analog to digital and needed a timing signal. And you think to yourself, well, if GPS is that embedded in our lives, there's cajillions of receivers around the world that's using them, and it's that embedded, it can't go away. It has to be supported. But here's the interesting point we're trying to make is the new space promise is about companies coming in that are responsive to what the commercial needs are and are building systems that replace these bureaucratic behemoths that were owned by the government. You look at what where the launch vehicle industry has gone, with SpaceX and Blue Origin, where space tourism has gone. There's even private companies building lunar bases. And most recently, one example I could give is the most expensive project ever initiated. The International Space Station is going to be deorbited within this decade, within a decade, and replaced with a private space station. This is the new space promise. There will be a replacement for GPS for military use only. It'll be, I'm sure, a multi-billion-dollar system developed, by one of the primes. Maybe we're a subcontractor to it, maybe. But we really want to target the commercial market and solve that problem of replacing timing from GPS. And why? So you look at if you believe what we believe that GPS will replace, why Xairos? Like, why would we be the right solution? And to understand that, I got to do a real quick explanation of how GPS works so we can understand why our system is better. GPS fundamentally works. It's a satellite that passes overhead. It's over your head right now. That has each satellite knows its own position and time, and broadcasts that to your receiver. And through kind of the magic of how the system is set up, it also has like a pseudorandom code so that your distance to that satellite. Now, you still don't know your position and time, so that's why you need multiple satellites in view. So you know the distance to each satellite, you know the position and time at each satellite. You can resolve your position and time triangulated by getting all those satellites, by having that common view. But you can understand too then that signal from GPS is weak. It doesn't penetrate buildings. It's been an open source code forever, so that makes adversaries able to reverse engineer it and create jamming and spoofing devices. What we're going to do is fundamentally different architecture. We're not going to worry about time, at least not at our position, at least at first. We're going to put up a satellite that has a master clock that broadcasts that time through our magic quantum technology to all points in view. And that master clock will offer an order of magnitude, a few orders of magnitude better synchronization for the network that is in view of that satellite. And what we're doing is our magic quantum technologies. All it is essentially this: a laser. In normal laser communications, the laser is pulsed on and off to create zeros and ones. That's ubiquitous technology that's used all over the place. Where quantum technology is a bit different is we turn down the power of the laser so that we get a stream of individual particles of light, known as photons, and then we process those photons and create pairs of entangled photons. And this is fairly straightforward, off-the-shelf hardware today that you can buy to create these entangled photons. And then we send them to the two clocks that we're trying to synchronize. And that technology, we invented it, we patented it, provides about multiple orders of magnitude better time synchronization and security than what exists today with any RF method or even other optical methods. And with that, we've already demonstrated this across fiber, so we can synchronize 2 clocks over fiber. Our technology works regardless of distance. So we're also can do this with over free space. So you can have it across a room, you can have it across a valley over kilometers, but also again, it works and links from a satellite to ground. And the goal for us, like I said, is we'll put a satellite up. We can start generating revenue with a fiber synchronization with that as our minimum viable product. But the goal is to replace GPS to get a global timing service, leveraging this technology, starting with satellites that provide timing over different regions. So it's very scalable. Now I talked about this, in the opening live stream, sent a lot of articles about this, but timing and synchronization is critical across a wide range of sectors. Obviously, position and navigation requires a good timing reference. The biggest consumer actually of timing and sync units is telecommunication networks. Like I mentioned, GPS is good enough for 4G LTE, but it is not good enough for 5G or 6G. The other major network market we're going after is data centers. There've been a lot of articles talking about how better timing synchronization accuracy allows distributed databases to work more efficiently, reducing power consumption and reducing carbon output, which is a big, kind of growing problem with data centers that roughly take up 5 to 10% of the global carbon output. The other area we're targeting as a near-term market is financial networks. Better accuracy means lower latency for high-frequency traders. Plus, with our quantum security, we can have a trusted timestamp that's necessary for security exchanges for financial transactions. And then the last kind of area we're going after, particularly for initial pilot project, is power grids. Power grids don't need a high level of accuracy, but security is a big concern with the utilities. So hopefully this kind of caught you up, or maybe there's a little bit more of the education about the problem we're solving and why our technology is better. Since we kicked off our SpacedVentures fundraise back in March, the funding has come in, and so that's allowed us to start moving forward with some of the milestones that we talked about back then. The key things we're trying to do with our initial fundraise right now, kind of grow our government and commercial business, get in with a pilot project, build office and team, and distribution partners. There's a lot of companies that are building these timing and synchronization units, and they could be our partners going forward. While we can focus on the space segment, they would build the hardware that links to our satellites. One of the major areas of progress we made since then is just expanding the team. The funding is starting to come in. We brought on Chris Green as our financial advisor. We brought in Alexandra Pinto. She's an AI quantum expert, helping us with our system architecture design. The other 2 major kind of additions to the team, we haven't been able to announce them yet, but are 2 additions to our advisory board. One of which is one of the top quantum scientists in the United States. This gentleman is very well known, very well renowned, working in a national lab that he's can't join us until August 1st. So we'll make an announcement in August. The other one we're very excited about is a longtime veteran, industry veteran in the timing and synchronization industry, where he's now working on the approvals with his kind of current management. But this particular individual has been a wealth of information for us on our go-to-market strategy, particularly because when I talk about what we're doing and how we want to approach this, his advice to us is, you're offering a Ferrari, i.e. sub-nanosecond accuracy, at the price of a Fiat. So, which is, the pricing of the hardware we're building. And he said, that's the value. That's what we're targeting. And he believes that we're doing the right thing. And a big part of what we're doing too is also distribution partnerships. We've started engaging with the companies that you see in this chart right here, as well as a few others. We're working on, kind of developing this. So the idea is we can focus on the satellites, and these companies will build the hardware. They got the sales channel, they'll install it. We do a revenue split, and that's what we have in our financial projections. The other kind of key update I want to make too is, using the funds to open an office. So we're looking at office space in the Boulder, Colorado area, 4,000 square feet, state-of-the-art facilities, be close to NIST and CU. We're also in the process of opening an office in the UK. Xairos is a global company. We'll have offices around the world eventually, but we've already got some research partnerships and business lining up in the UK. So UK will be our first international office. And here's the most important, most valuable update is we were able to use a little bit of the funds raised so far to build our next generation proof of concept. We've demonstrated quantum clock synchronization a number of times and with kind of different lab different lab equipment. But this is our equipment, off-the-shelf equipment, roughly about 50K worth of equipment. The red box there is our source of entangled photons. 2 boxes on the upper right are the detectors. Those will be the 2 clocks that are synchronized. We're already moving out very rapidly, breaking new ground with our development, with our algorithm, our proprietary algorithm and software. And we're going 100 miles an hour in a bootstrap fashion. So with the close of the raise today, we're hoping, we can kind of hit a certain milestone. The next step for us is to integrate this system, this fiber linked system with an optical link, a free space optical link. So we can send entangled photons across a room. And then the next step beyond that is package that into our MVP. And that MVP will be used to actually provide timing for a pilot project across a fiber terrestrial network. So I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Jivika and say, hey, look, I don't know, the audience has some questions. Hopefully this is straightforward.
Wow, David, you have been busy. That's what I've taken away from that, which is really fantastic to see. We have some great questions already coming through the comments, which I'll pull up in a bit. If you have been, ruminating on that perfect question, there's no such thing as a perfect question. There's no such thing as a dumb question, as a stupid question. Whatever you want to know, this is your opportunity. So definitely, put it in the chat. That's my last plug on that. Something also that I want to mention, David, your campaign is closing. So we only have a couple more hours for people to ask questions on the discussion page, read through your pitch. I mean, obviously the pitch will stay for a long time, but this is the last opportunity that people have to invest in your campaign. So for those of you who are tuning in just now, at 10 p.m. Eastern is the official cutoff date. So definitely, make good use of this time that we have now. And let's just move on to some questions. So I think we've had some interesting people with backgrounds in some of the laser communications fields that you were mentioning here. So there's a question that I want to pick up, and it might have been answered, but let's just hear kind of your view on it too. So Tyler is asking, what is gained by using an entangled photon beam? And maybe, David, you can give some more information on what an entangled photon beam really is as well.
Sure. Well, there's 2 aspects of it, the accuracy and the security. So particularly if you come from the photonics world, the quantum world, it's fairly well known about using entangled photons to provide a level of security. And in the world, so this was invented a few decades ago. What this ability to create entangled photons, send them to single photon detectors, and because they're entangled through the magic of quantum entanglement, they share the same. Those photons share the same information. So you send it to one detector, that's Alice, and cryptography parlance. You send it to the other entangled photon to Bob. That's the other part. And because they share information, then Alice measures her photons and knows what Bob's are because they're sharing the same information. And Alice and Bob use that to create a symmetric string of bits that become an encryption key. This is what's known as quantum key distribution. It was invented in the 80s and 90s. There's a number of companies building these systems, deploying them in networks as a way of, just an extra level of security for cryptography. The breakthrough my co-founder had was to say, hey, we could also use this. Alice and Bob have clocks. Those clocks drift relative to each other. And, again, he knows the value of providing better time accuracy and security. So we could use it for that. And that's kind of the genesis of the company, the technology that is the core of our company. And because they're entangled, you get the security that means that if there was a man in the middle that intercepted a photon meant for Bob, the entanglement's broken and both Alice and Bob know it. So that's a level of security that does not exist today with any time transfer method. The other piece of it is just the accuracy. I mean, it's a little bit in the weeds of why it's more accurate than other kind of time transfer methods. But essentially it comes down to the fact that each photon is a click on a detector, and that is a discrete line that can be used to synchronize clocks. And so hopefully that's not too deep in the weeds, but happy to kind of share more details if somebody's interested.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will say about the Xairos campaign is that you, David, have been really good about posting updates on your raise, right? So if you haven't already checked it out, just below the live stream screen that you're seeing on your screen, if you're watching it on the SpacedVentures website, which is, again, recommended since that's the best viewing experience, there is an updates tab, and you'll be able to see some of these updates that David went over just now in his presentation from March until now. And you actually, mentioned you released an update earlier this morning, David. Can you just give us a brief rundown of some of the highlights of that?
Well, as part of what we're doing is we're in education mode to educate the general audience about the importance and the value of what we're doing. So we spend a lot of time talking about the problem and the problem set, and we've been referenced in a number of articles that are in the update that I sent out. Definitely, I think with what's happening in Ukraine, it's coming forefront in people's mind, the importance of providing a replacement solution for GPS. And so our feeling is, as a group, as a company, is that, we have the best solution, but at the very least, the audience has to understand that GPS needs to be replaced with something better. So there's some articles in the update tab there. We have a weekly newsletter too, where we highlight news in the world of timing and GPS and space and quantum. So if you're not signed up for that, make sure you sign up for that. Even above and beyond this, we want everybody to be aware of kind of the progress we're making and the value of what we're doing.
Right. And again, David sends out weekly newsletters, correct, David? It's every week a little bit. There's a theme of the week, how what you're doing relates to the wider world, and that's a great way to stay updated with the latest updates in quantum. And you talk about quantum communications, quantum. Right, there's the link below, just the stream for you to subscribe to that newsletter. We have another question, so let's switch gears to that. Brendan is asking, what orbit are you targeting for your first satellite?
Our satellites will work over GEO, so there's a thought that eventually we'll be at a GEO orbit. It just makes the ground terminal cheaper and easier to produce. But the first so many satellites we're going to launch are going to be LEO-MEO. So that's another value I'd like to highlight with the SpacedVentures raise is we've gotten connected with other satellite companies that we could work with to launch our first satellites in a LEO orbit. So the architecture could go a couple different ways. If they were our own satellites or hosted on someone else's satellite, GEO would nominally be the way we go. But again, there's also a thought too that we could also piggyback on other people's LEO or MEO constellations. So.
Sounds great. So we did collect a couple of questions while we were collecting registrations for this event. So I'm going to switch gears to that and then come back to the live chat. So keep them coming in. Jermaine has a question. on generally how are quantum clocks shaping or reshaping our future?
Well, no, I mean, it's a great question. We think that we look at this as a very disruptive breakthrough technology. It was only invented in 2018, I should mention. My co-founder invented it, wrote some papers on it, and demonstrated it and patented it in 2018. So it feels like, in the grand scheme of things, we've spent we were formed as a company not long after that, and been spending a lot of time kind of writing white papers, educating the public, and getting, the initial contracts. We had to write a number of white papers to get our initial Air Force, NASA, Navy contracts. And I do believe that the market needs sub-nanosecond. It needs security. It needs resiliency. We are very cognizant of what else is out there, kind of other ways to do that. In fact, we're not even necessarily married to our own technology. Like maybe we can incorporate other technologies if we think they're better. But nothing we've seen is better. We need to get to picosecond level accuracy. That's our target. That's our goal as a company. Right now, today, if you want to synchronize 2 clocks across a room, you could probably do it at sub-nanosecond level accuracy. If you want to synchronize a clock in Paris to a clock in London to a clock in New York to a clock in Tokyo, there's no way to do that, not at any kind of accuracy. So that's really our target as a company.
Got it. Maybe we can touch on a little bit more about how the synchronization works. We have Paul, and I'm sure other people curious. So Paul's question is, do you sync the clocks in the various satellites? If so, curious how?
So for example, we got an Air Force contract to look at an architecture where we synchronize the clocks in the constellation of satellites. And it's straightforward, right? You just have a quantum link between satellites. The only challenge, not challenge, but the only thing you have to decide with your system architecture is what's the master clock? What's the reference that everything is tied to, disciplined to? So, but once you figure out that reference, then you have your master clock, and every satellite that links to it or ground point that links to it will be synchronized to that master clock. Now, the way GPS works today is GPS is a very cumbersome solution to this. Each GPS satellite has 4 atomic clocks. They're huge. They're big. They need cryo cooling, but they're very stable, and they use the kind of average time for all of them, and they synchronize once every few orbits to a ground clock at the U.S. Naval Observatory. So that's how they do it. But, again, we're looking at this as, the synchronization, the absolute time isn't really what's valuable. The relative time between all the clocks in the node is what's important. And that's where our technology is really going to be valuable.
Got it. So we have another question from Sean. Sean has a couple of questions, so I'll bring up the first one. He asks from a systems engineering, from a systems administrative, from a systems administration standpoint, how is managing a Xairos timing system different than the modern equivalent?
Well, like I said, if you peel back the onion and look at how we did our time today, you're going to realize there's a lot of room for improvement. It's not a very good, robust system. I've actually kind of written about this in my newsletter about how GPS gets their time. Like I said, it's the multiple atomic clocks that are averaged, and they sync up every to a clock on the ground. But the other thing that's very interesting to me is you got BIPM in Europe that is kind of creating a UTC time standard, and then there's the NIST equivalent in Boulder, and a couple of other, the Koganai in Japan for the Japanese equivalent. And they got a really, I believe, a clumsy method of how they synchronize their clocks on a fairly, irregular basis. So the way we're looking at the world is we got a master clock. That master clock can be tied to any one of those reference clocks. Boulder, Colorado, Gila, we can reference to that. That links to our satellites, and then we distribute the time from there from a satellite with cross links, and then down to the ground from there. It's a timing. I love that you asked the question in a systems standpoint, because this is what we're building. It's a system architecture It's not a, hey, we're a quantum company. This is a system architecture to build a true global time reference that is stable, that is accurate, including last mile distribution with fiber and RF signals.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So we have another question from Kevin. Kevin asks, has your company looked into setting up an office near Washington, D.C.? From what I know, there's a lot of quantum research and funding occurring here because so many government organizations are interested in the potential.
No, that's an outstanding question. So it's funny because there's a number of areas or groups that are kind of incentivizing companies like us to set up shop. One of the more active areas actually is Maryland, kind of around the University of Maryland, College Park area. They got a lot of good quantum startups and researchers around there. There's also kind of like a little bit of a quantum ecosystem in Chicago, on the East Coast, I want to say kind of upstate New York or Brooklyn, New York, and a few others. They're also like Quantum Beach in Miami and things like that. Right now, our core office, main office is in Boulder, Colorado. And that's partly because we got a grant from the state of Colorado, $250,000 grant. They're very keen on setting up what they call a quantum front range. And they got a number of quantum startups and companies here, including Colquana, Quantinuum, a Honeywell, that's a Honeywell venture, Atom Computing, and a few others. So, but we will have to have an office eventually in Washington, D.C. We were just talking about that with my team, particularly because, just our ambitions about being part of the future network for the military and as well as a commercial. We have to have a presence in DC to make sure that, that all goes smoothly.
Got it. Yeah, it's very interesting the way we name these things. So you mentioned in Boulder, they're doing quantum front range. Is that what they're trying to call it?
Yeah, that's some marketing person came up with that, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Look, in LA, there's Silicon Valley, there's Silicon Beach now. I didn't realize personally that there's so many nodes of quantum activity across the country, which is super interesting to see. It actually reminds me of another question that we have in the chat. So Isabella is actually majoring in laser engineering. Congratulations, Isabella. Definitely a worthwhile profession to pursue, as this conversation is showing. And she has another question kind of related to that. So switching gears to, a little bit of career advice, if you will, David. But just wanting to know if photonic engineering is a good degree and maybe what a good second major would be to work on technology like yours in the future.
No, well, yes, and yes. I strongly encourage anybody who, is kind of early in their education and career to go into photonics and quantum optics. Partly because we have kind of a lack of talent in that area, and they're in very, very high demand. You graduate with that degree, and you'll have your pick of jobs to go with. But the other part of it is, it's a lot of work. This is you gotta like math, you gotta like gory details. But when you get in a lab environment, man, that is fun. Building kind of quantum systems nowadays in a kind of a lab environment it's really just enjoyable, I believe. And the other thing is the future. A lot of the future enabling technologies above and beyond just a timing system are going to lean on quantum networks, quantum as well as photonics. Photonics is fairly common for like fiber networks and things like that. Just anything lasers in the photonics realm. But in the quantum world, they're working on some things that just come across as sci-fi. And I always like to try to make sure I'm not on the hype train when it comes to quantum, though occasionally I do hop on and off. But there's some impressive things that are going on in the world of quantum research beyond quantum computing. I'm talking about quantum sensors that are very sensitive, RF receivers, accelerometers, magnetic field and gravity field sensors. These are potential technologies that are still early stage, but will one day enable the quantum internet, networking quantum computers so that you're entangling multiple quantum computers to get just incredible computational power. Things like oil and mineral exploration. There's been demonstrations with quantum sensors that can detect tunnels deep beneath the ground because they're so sensitive to the gravity field. So I highly encourage us, get into this. This will be, go through the painful math, and you'll be rewarded with a long career with very interesting, very exciting new breakthroughs in technology. You won't be bored.
So cool. It seems like it's just kind of starting to see what the possibilities are, right? So wow, Isabella, kind of jealous. You get to go in and get in on the ground floor. Super cool. And Isabella actually asked another question earlier. Her question was, is Xairos on the trajectory of seeking more quantum engineers for your team?
Yes.
Maybe
yes.
You can touch
yes.
on that.
Yes, absolutely. So right now we have a research collaboration agreement with Louisiana State University. They have an outstanding quantum optics group that was previously set up and run by the late great John Dowling. And we just recently signed a research collaboration agreement with the University of Portsmouth, specifically for recruiting, because like I mentioned, quantum optics talent is in very, very high demand. So I got to hustle. I got to bump shoulders with, the big Silicon Valley firms that want to snatch up people and put them in a boring cubicle somewhere. So yeah, absolutely. I'm looking for those kind of people. One of the things I kind of want to mention, it's kind of subtle but our vision for the company, there's that chunk that's going to be, I'm an engineer, I'm launching satellites, we're going to get them in orbit, we're providing a real, tangible system that generates revenue. But in parallel with that, we're going to have our core R&D group. And we have this, me and my co-founder, we dream about this long-term vision where, the R&D group is going to develop those kind of next generation technologies that allows us, Xairos, to address the quantum internet and some of the other technologies. Last mile position and timing for self-driving vehicles. Those are all in our long-term technology roadmaps. And I'm old enough that I remember back when innovation used to come from Bell Labs and Lockheed Skunk Works and Xerox PARC. And that doesn't exist anymore. And I feel like once we're a large growing company, that's what we want to replicate, is to create our own, R&D center of excellence with melding this idea of advanced quantum and photonics with a long-term vision that it's one day going to create that disruptive technology to benefit us all.
It's such an incredible vision. I hope everyone who's attending this live stream is entitled to a tour of that facility when that happens, huh, David?
Yep. Oh, no, that's absolutely.
So congratulations also on announcing your UK office. I believe that's the first time you're publicly kind of declaring that as well, right?
Yeah, so we're in the process of setting it up. So it's not a physical place yet, but it's one of our team members is based. Actually, two of our team members are based in UK. We have another team member based in Europe. We're an international company. We got some business lining up in the UK and partnerships lining up there. My co-founder was stationed in London for a number of years, so we kind of know the ecosystem there. And also, when it comes to like kind of putting in our timing and sync system into commercial networks, I feel like there's also a lot of proactive development going on in UK and Europe. So yeah, setting up a UK office. If you're a space company, you're a global company anyway, and that's just a natural step for us. So we'll have that set up, and by this summer, that's our plan.
Yeah. I'm just curious, Team Xairos behind the scenes, how much of your time is actually spent in the lab versus, doing business development and just kind of doing regular like office things? And how much of your time do you really kind of spend with some of the prototypes that you showed earlier? That's just kind of a general question I've had for some time.
My co-founder and one of the colleagues, they're spending pretty much, I would say 70-80% of their time. I wish I could be more involved with it. I'm in the if you ever want to be like a technology space startup, never be the CEO, man. You're the person who has to like empty the garbage and do stuff. So, I have to cut the invoices and order the equipment. And that's the extent of the fun I get. So I'm
Okay.
the day, this fundraiser has been outstanding for us to catalyze and get us going with building hardware. We didn't have the internal funds to do that. The government contracts we were getting were mostly steady phase business. So this is really getting us off the ground to get our hands in there and start, making very good, strong progress building hardware. The goal is, as our next step is expand the team. It'll be engineers. We got a half dozen near-term projects we're going to do, building off the hardware we already have. There'll be some very cool things we want to demonstrate when that's done. And, depending on kind of how the funding goes, we should be able to try to do that, Q3, Q4 this year.
Great. Well, wish you the best of luck. We have a little bit more time, maybe 5 more minutes or so of questions. So if you have them, last chance, put them in the chat. Also, if I've missed your question, I'm trying to read them in the order that they come in. If I've missed it, please just post it again, and we'll try to get to them in the time that we have. But one other question that Fred had. Can your new system be jammed in ways similar to GPS signal jamming? And if yes, what are effective solutions? So switching back and talking a little bit more about the tech and how that works.
No, that's what's nice about what we have is it's possible to jam it, but be very, very difficult. You kind of have to have the man in the middle would have to be complete line of sight and kind of overwhelm the receiving system with, photons at the same wavelength. And of course, there are things we could do then, countermeasures, I suppose, to stop that. But they would have to be directly in the line of sight between the satellite and the ground receiver. RF is again, it's trivially easy to jam it. You guys know that. You can go on eBay or even Amazon for a while was selling GPS jammers. They were like $20. And also kind of more importantly, particularly for government and military customers, is spoofing. Spoofing is another level of capability where your GPS receiver gets a signal from a fake GPS satellite and makes you think you're a different time or location than you actually are. And there have been stories about, say, example, there's a drone that wandered into Iranian airspace and was shot down. Supposedly, it was at least what we know is the Iranians used Chinese spoofing equipment to make the drone think it was still in their airspace. So spoofing has been around forever, and I'll tell you, it's very hard. The government, the military spends a lot of money to try to come up with new anti-spoofing authentication type technology, like verify that signal is coming from a friendly source. And it's a tough problem in the RF domain. You have to do some funny encryption and things like that.
Got it. So obviously Xairos' solution is a lot more secure than GPS, and given the obvious advantages that your technology has, Paul's question is pretty valid. When do you anticipate your first customer?
Well, we already got government contracts, so legally, I don't know, I consider that customer. But I think your question is commercial customer. Our target is, we're looking at this as a stepwise, plan, right? Next step for us is, with the funds we have, create a package that is a commercial product. And then we want to get into what we call a pilot project. There's about a half dozen, actually about a dozen pilot projects we're targeting. So if we can get in, again, if funding goes well and timing goes well on what we're doing, we hardware and get that initial commercial revenue for pilot projects. A couple of them are basic quantum network projects, so they're kind of public-private partnerships. Like you can look up Chicago Quantum Exchange for an example of that, but there's a few of those being built. Quantum networks are good for us because there's good funding coming into them, and they need very, very accurate timing, picosecond level. So that's a natural fit for us for a pilot project. But we're also some public-private things for securing power grid, smart grid infrastructure, as well as one project we're looking at is free space, kind of fiber in the sky for future 5G, 6G networks. So we're motivated to get to kind of build hardware and get these things installed. This is my background. This is what I love doing. So I'm really itching to get going with that.
Great, lots in the pipeline. We actually have lots of suggestions in the chat as well of where you should open your next office. So David, I will leave it to you to give us another update on that. But let's go ahead with our last question. Let's see. So Kevin is asking, relation to his previous question, have you been in talks with the University of Maryland's quantum department at all, David?
Only perfectly. We got invited to, they had a real outstanding, they've had actually a couple of quantum seminars, so I do need to engage with them. So yeah, send me an introduction, please.
Fantastic. That's what's so cool about these live streams. We get to, talk with people from all walks, and you never know who's listening, who can make an introduction, who can provide a suggestion that will lead to an insight. Really great stuff. So I think we're going to leave it with that for Q&A. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in that. Again, as a reminder, if you didn't get your question asked in time or are driving, listening to this and not able to type out, definitely stay safe. But you can also leave your last minute questions on the discussion tab of Xairos's pitch page. And again, as a reminder, the campaign is closing very, very soon at 10 p.m. Eastern, so only a couple of hours between now and then when David is going to go back in and be able to respond and give you that last minute information that'll help you decide what you want to do with that. And obviously, David, I'll leave you to kind of end us with any last minute call to actions you might have, or requests, or any messages you have for all your investors right now. I'll say thank you, everyone, for tuning in from SpacedVentures side. We always love doing these live streams because we get to engage with so many of you and see where everyone is coming from. Obviously, we had some people who have an educational background in this. We try to make these streams as accessible as possible for those who are developing that interest, trying to learn a new subject or a new field, to get a little bit of a heads up on the technological trends that are upcoming. Make you sound really interesting at dinner parties. Yeah, we like to do that. So with that, thank you again for tuning in. And David, it's all yours to close us out.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, look, thank you, Jivika and the SpacedVentures team, and to the investors that kind of have been contacted us, invested in us, believe in us, and taken the journey with us. Thank you very much. This has been just a wonderful injection in the arm for us as a team, because it allows us to expand and build hardware, and that's really been wonderful for us. Like Jivika said, we're our fundraise is closing tonight. We're hoping, fingers crossed, we can get a bit more funding out of this before it closes, and that allows us then to take the hardware to the next level and kind of get us to the point where we can build that commercial MVP package, because that's an enabler. It's a catalyst for what we're doing, and that's part of it. But also the investors, we've really had wonderful connections with the investors, so much better than what we expected. A few have reached out to us. You saw that even in like the chat, people saying, hey, they're going to connect us to quantum group that they know, ideas for setting up offices. We've had some of the investors come out and reach out to us and say, hey, let's do some space projects together. Let's do some development together. One of our investors, gentleman who's retired, semi-retired photographer, and said, hey, maybe a few years down the road when we have our first launch, we can get you, you can go there and maybe you want to take some photos of the launch. Oh yeah, that'd be great. So this is really the value of this relationship we have, is having that network, that community. They're connecting us with even kind of broader customers and partners and employees potentially. So really outstanding, really a wonderful experience. And with that, just thank you to everybody involved, and just thank you for joining us on the journey. Subscribe, invest, and we'll continue this fun thing that we're doing. Thank you.